Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Lees. Here are today's top stories. NHS waiting list hits a new record high as over 5.5 million people wait to start hospital treatment in England. The Scottish Parliament approves a controversial vaccine passport scheme, and the French Interior Minister accuses the UK of financial blackmail in response to a meeting with the Home Secretary over migrant crossings. The number of people in England waiting for hospital treatment has reached a new record high. A total of 5.6 million people were waiting to start treatment at the end of July, according to new figures from NHS England. This is the highest number since records began in August 2007. The figure includes those waiting for hip and knee replacements and cataract surgery. Health and care staff could be required to have both COVID and flu vaccines to protect patients. If they refuse, they may be moved back to office roles or even face the risk of losing their jobs. NTD's John Robson has the details.
The government has launched a consultation on mandating vaccines for frontline health and care workers. Unless they are medically exempt, staff could be required to have both COVID and flu vaccines to protect patients. The government previously said staff in registered care homes in England must be vaccinated against COVID-19 from November unless medically exempt. According to the Department of Health, 92% of NHS Trust staff have received one dose of a COVID vaccine, and 88% have received both doses. However, the department says new data shows the uptake rates are only 78% for some NHS trusts. Flu vaccination rates in the health service were nearly 80% last year, but in some settings they were only 53%. Care Minister Helen Whately tells Times Radio health workers who decline the jab could be moved to back office roles. And she told Sky News that those who refuse the jab should not work in social care. Latest figures from NHS England suggest over 230,000 social care staff are yet to be vaccinated. But the home care sector fears 1 in 5 staff could leave if the vaccine becomes mandatory for wider social care staff. The consultation is for 6 weeks and a final decision is expected this winter. Joanne Robson, NTD News.
The Scottish Parliament voted on plans for a controversial vaccine passport scheme which would see unvaccinated Scots banned from nightclubs and large-scale events. NTD's Eddie Aiken brings us this report.
Scotland's Parliament approves plans for a controversial vaccine passport scheme. Under the plans, attendance at large events would require a vaccine passport from October the 1st. Details of the plans were published on Thursday morning, just hours before the vote. According to the plans, the scheme will make a QR code through a smartphone app. The code needs to be scanned so that they can enter nightclubs or other adult entertainment venues. Unseated indoor events with more than 500 people, outdoor unseated events with more than 4,000 people, or any event with more than 10,000 will all require the pass. The Scottish Government hopes mandating vaccine passports will encourage more reluctant Scots to get vaccinated. The Conservatives, Labour and Liberal Democrats all voted against the plans. Scottish Labour's Jackie Baillie said there is no evidence the scheme will see more people getting a jab, and Scottish Lib Dem leader Alex Cole-Hamilton said you should never have to provide any aspect of your medical history to a bouncer to get into a nightclub. The Scottish Greens were highly critical of vaccine passports in the past, but the party has since signed a formal partnership agreement with the SNP. 68 MSPs voted for the government motion, while 55 voted against. Though Scotland's Parliament has voted on it, the scheme is yet to be finalised, and the paper doesn't define what a nightclub is. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
Advertising alcohol should be limited to protect young people, says the Alcohol Health Alliance. A poll earlier this year found that 77% of people support controls to limit the exposure of children and young people to alcohol advertising. NTD's Neil Rodro speaks with a member of the alliance.
The Alcohol Health Alliance, or AHA, is urging the government to bring in comprehensive marketing restrictions on and offline to protect children from the harm caused by drinks adverts. A poll of more than 12,000 people across Great Britain earlier this year found that 77% support controls to limit the exposure of children and young people to alcohol advertising. Just over half of those questions said they would support not allowing alcohol advertising in outdoor and public spaces, such as streets, parks and public transport. I spoke with Alcohol Change UK, who are active members of the AHA. They told me they, along with many others, as part of the AHA, are working to reduce the harm that can be caused by alcohol.
And I think we've known for some time that there is a relationship between children's exposure to alcohol marketing and the likelihood that they will start drinking and drink more.
Meisel said young people drink for various reasons, but alcohol advertising plays a part in it.
And certainly when we've looked at this in the past, we found quite remarkably high rates of recognition of some of the big alcohol brands by primary school age children. So this marketing is plainly being noticed and absorbed by young people.
He said a familiarity and positive attitude towards alcohol through seeing these adverts can develop a greater desire to try the product. Meisel says one simple measure that's been proposed is that no adverts for alcohol are shown alongside films rated as suitable for under 18s, but online advertising is more difficult.
I mean, in theory, a number of platforms will restrict their alcohol advertising to people who are known to be over the age of 18. We also know, on the other hand, that online age verification is very weak.
A government spokesman said the government is committed to ensuring children and young people are protected from inappropriate content, and we continue to work with industry to address concerns over any irresponsible promotions, advertising and marketing relating to alcohol. The Advertising Standards Authority has a duty to take appropriate action if new evidence emerges that clearly highlights significant problems with alcohol advertising. Neil Woodrow, NTD News.
The French Interior Minister accuses the UK of financial blackmail. This comes after Home Secretary Priti Patel met him in London in the wake of hundreds of migrants arriving ashore in Kent over the past few days. NTD's Anna Rodriguez has the story.
French Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin said on Thursday that he had clearly told Home Secretary Priti Patel that the UK must stick to its commitments on migrants. Darmanin was responding after Britain approved plans to turn away boats illegally carrying migrants to its shores. He wrote in a tweet, "France will not accept any practice that goes against the maritime law and will not accept any financial blackmail." Patel has reportedly ordered officials to rewrite maritime laws to allow border force to turn boats around, forcing them to be dealt with by French authorities. On Wednesday, she met Darmanin in London alongside a G7 ministers meeting. She wrote on Twitter afterwards, "I made clear that delivering results and stopping crossings were an absolute priority for the British people." The meeting comes just days after Patel reportedly told MPs she is prepared to withhold £54 million of cash promised to France unless the French authorities intercept more migrants. According to the Home Office, the UK authorities had to rescue or intercept more than 450 people on Tuesday. Over 14,000 people have now crossed to the UK aboard small boats this year. Anna Rodriguez, NTD News.
A member of the House of Lords questions why British citizens have to take PCR tests upon return to the UK, but migrants coming in on dinghies only need to take lateral flow tests. Here's NTD's Joanne Robson with the details.
Lord Balf asked Parliament about the government's testing rules for people travelling to the UK. He told British media outlet The Daily Sceptic that during the pandemic he travels regularly to Brussels for business meetings. Despite being double vaccinated, every time I return to the UK, even if I have only been abroad for 2 days, I must take a PCR test before returning. as I am told that the lateral flow test is unsatisfactory. He asked in a written parliamentary question why illegal migrants arriving to England only take the less accurate lateral flow tests, not PCR tests. The answer from Home Office Minister Baroness Williams of Trafford confirms the suitability of lateral flow tests for those arriving from abroad. All migrants are tested on arrival with a lateral flow test. Any refusing are treated as if infectious and isolated. Lateral flow testing is a fast and simple way to test people who do not have symptoms of COVID-19. It adds that any migrants with a positive result will receive a PCR test to confirm the result. This calls into question why British citizens travelling abroad are required to take the more costly PCR test upon arriving home. Joanne Robson, NTD News.
The UK's senior climate official Alok Sharma held talks with Beijing to push China to reduce its carbon emissions. Sharma is president of the COP26 climate summit that will be held in Glasgow in November. He said it was a constructive talk. But Sharma came under fire from BBC China correspondent Robin Brandt. On Wednesday, Brandt said the only coverage of the talks was from Chinese state media, which made claims that Sharma hailed China's efforts in tackling climate change. China is the world's biggest emitter of greenhouse gases. Hong Kong police on Wednesday arrested 4 members of a pro-democracy group that organises the annual 4th of June rally to commemorate those who died in the bloody 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. Flora Bradley-Watson reports.
4 arrests in Hong Kong on Wednesday dealt a new blow to the city's opposition movement. Those detained are all members of the pro-democracy group that organises a yearly vigil in Hong Kong for the bloody crackdown in Tiananmen Square. The June 4th event commemorates those killed when China quashed 1989 student-led protests. Activist and barrister Chow Hang-tong was arrested along with 3 others from the Hong Kong Alliance in support of patriotic democratic movements in China. A day before her arrest, Chow spoke to reporters outside police headquarters.
The more we resist, the more they will suppress you. But whether it would be better not to resist, I don't think so. If you give up and don't fight, they will not let you go. As we have seen, they have been chasing after all the disbanded groups.
She had been at the headquarters to deliver a message to officers that the alliance would not provide the information they had requested. Last month, police had sent a letter to the organisation giving it until Tuesday this week to provide details of its membership, finances and activities. The letter accused the alliance of being an agent of foreign forces, adding that failure to comply with the deadline could result in a fine and 6 months in jail. Alliance leaders Albert Ho and Lee Chuk-yang are already in jail over their roles in anti-government protests that roared the city in 2019. The National Security Department said that investigations were ongoing and did not rule out further arrests.
Still to come, stricter restrictions for unvaccinated people in one German state. That's once filled beds in intensive care units reach a limit. That and more after the break. The southern German state of Baden-Württemberg is planning to introduce Germany's strictest COVID-19 restrictions. From Monday, those who are not vaccinated will be excluded from public life if the number of COVID patients in hospitals crosses a threshold. As Business Insider reports, once ICU bed occupancy reaches 390, unvaccinated people will not be able to go to the cinema, eat at a restaurant, shop for clothing, and so on. As of Thursday, about 170 beds were occupied by COVID-19 patients. Unvaccinated people will only be allowed to get petrol or shop for necessities like groceries or bread. A negative PCR test will no longer suffice to enter indoor venues. Excluded from those restrictions are pregnant women and children under 12. Trade groups are warning of a death blow to retail in the state. A rights group filed a complaint to German prosecutors this week, alleging that several fashion retailers may have profited from forced labor in China's cotton industry. The European Centre for Constitutional and Human Rights accuses Hugo Boss and others of abetting and profiting directly or indirectly from forced labor in the Xinjiang region. The filing aims to convince the Federal Attorney General to open an inquiry that, its authors say, could hold management of the retailers to account and make customers more aware of abuses in supply chains. Hugo Boss, in a statement, rejects the accusations. The United Nations cites what it says are credible reports that 1 million Muslims held in camps have been put to work in Xinjiang. China holds roughly 20% of the world's cotton market, and 85% of its cotton comes from Xinjiang. The second round of hearings examining evidence of an alleged genocide against the Uyghur ethnicity in Xinjiang province will start in London on Friday. The testimonies of torture and mistreatment from the first set of hearings were harrowing. The Independent People's Tribunal will be chaired by prominent barrister Sir Geoffrey Nice QC, who led the prosecution of Slobodan Milosevic. In April, the UK Parliament passed a motion declaring China is committing genocide against the Uyghur people in Xinjiang. And in France, the historic trial for the 2015 Paris terrorist attacks enters its second day. Some representatives of victims and survivors expressed dismay that the main defendant is using it as a platform to express his views. NTD's Adverts tells us more.
Survivors of the ISIS terrorist group's 2015 attacks in Paris were among those who turned up for the long-awaited trial.
I came here to see. I came here mostly out of respect for the victims. I was lucky. I didn't have anything, just psychological. But I have seen horrible things. I'm here out of respect for the victims, for the wounded, and that touches me enormously.
9 gunmen and suicide bombers struck within minutes of each other at the National Soccer Stadium, the Bataclan Concert Hall, and restaurants and cafes. The attack on the 13th of November 2015 left 130 people dead and hundreds injured.
We went to drink some beers and listen to some rock and roll. Those who were out on the terraces. What were they doing? They were with friends. They were having beers. What did they do wrong? Nothing. And we were more down. No, it's impossible to move on to other things. There must be justice.
20 men are charged, but 6 of them will be tried in absentia. Salah Abdeslam is believed to be the only surviving member of the group that carried out the attacks. On the opening day, he told the court that he was an ISIS soldier and later shouted out in the courtroom about his treatment. On Thursday, a judge had to briefly suspend the hearing after Abdeslam continued to make political points from the dock.
Of course, once again, it's very difficult for the victims to hear those comments, especially because Salah Abdeslam, during the length of the preliminary inquiry, has never spoken out. He always kept silent.
Some survivors expressed their dismay that Abdeslam was using the trial as a platform to express his views.
My question is, how can someone continue behaving that way with the victims there, with all the implications just behind him? I have more questions than answers. So the first day, which should have been procedural, turned out to be filled with emotion, and not always positively. In any case, we were plunged deep into it from the start, and it's going to last 9 months, so it will be quite a challenge.
The court's top judge said it was a historic trial. The attacks transformed France, which declared a state of emergency that night and now has armed officers constantly patrolling public spaces.
Nous rappelons, évidemment, les attaques lâches et monstrueuses que
We recall, of course, these cowardly and monstrous attacks that our country has suffered in previous years. I especially want to reaffirm our determination to do everything to halt the terrorist threat.
Victims' testimonies are set to start on the 28th of September. A verdict is not expected before late May 2022. Earl Rhodes, NTD News.
To the city of water now, as Venice prepares to charge an entry fee in an effort to stem the flow of tourists. But some believe the controversial idea will have unwanted side effects. Here's NTD's Neil Woodrow with the story.
Tourists are packing the streets of Venice. Police watch them from a control room in their headquarters. To combat over-tourism, they are tracking every person who sets foot in the lagoon city. By monitoring CCTV, optical sensors and SIM cards, they can tell residents from visitors, Italians from foreigners, where people are coming from and where they are heading.
It is the first time that this is being done in the world, where a booking will be needed to visit a city, and consequently a management of the flux of people. We are talking about an experiment that intends to be inclusive.
Every 15 minutes, the system provides a snapshot of how many people are in each part of the city. A month ago, cruise ships were banned from the lagoon. Now, authorities are preparing to demand tourists pre-book their visit on an app. Day trippers will be charged between £3 and £9 to enter, depending on the time of the year.
For 30 years it's totally different. Before it was less tourists, everything was... Venice was really romantic 20, 30 years ago.
Many are sceptical of the new measures.
I know also that there are some inhabitants of Venice who complain because there are too many people visiting the city, but I think that the city lives also thanks to the tourists. So maybe there are a little bit too many people sometimes, but they should definitely find another way.
I can understand it because the city is very overcrowded and it will probably be a lot nicer for the citizens of Venice. But on the other hand, I think having to pay money to visit a city makes it for poorer tourists more inaccessible and not as feasible to visit Venice.
Authorities have yet to decide how many people is too many.
They were telling us this morning that the businesses that depend on tourism live only on the weekends. This is no longer a city with 365 days a year of tourism. There are too many limitations, too many stops. And if we add also the limit on numbers, I am sure that the city will die in tourism terms.
There is no date for the new rules to kick in, but they are expected to come into force by 2023. Neil Woodrow, NTD News.
Germany's capital, Berlin, is hosting its annual Festival of Lights. It is one of the largest open-air art galleries in the world, with over 70 locations involved in this year's display. NTD's Costas brings us this report.
This year's Festival of Lights in Berlin is on display for the 17th time. It sees a particular emphasis on highlighting the environment, under the motto, Creating Tomorrow. Sponsors are pledging to an environmentally friendly future. Many projections and installations feature themes such as sustainability. The festival is taking place all over the city, from the famous Brandenburg Gate and Potsdamer Square to train stations and embassies. The event is free and runs until the 12th of September. Costas, NTD News.
And finally, the Toy Museum in St Petersburg has opened a new exhibition dedicated to bicycles. Organisers say it aims to show that these modes of transport can also be works of art. NTD's 88 Ken brings us this story.
Two-wheeled rides are on display at the Toy Museum in St Petersburg, Russia. The exhibition features a range of bike models. There is a bicycle icebreaker for cycling in the winter and bikes for people with disabilities.
When we are talking about bicycles, people start to smile immediately. It's something known, loved and interesting for them.
One bike in the exhibition is twice as high as most others. It was created by Igor Baronas, who named it Yellow Angel.
Angel is the symbol of St Petersburg. When I ride an ordinary bike, I just head down the road. But when I ride the Yellow Angel, I float above the ground. Feelings are completely different.
Baronas says he was inspired by the angel in the city's Peter and Paul Cathedral. A QR code helps visitors navigate the exhibition. It offers information on the bikes and saves 3D models of them on visitors' phones. People can then create pictures of themselves as if they were sitting on the bikes. The exhibition opened on 18th of June and will run until the 12th of September. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
That's the news for today, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Stuart Lees. Thank you for watching our daily news show on YouTube. You can also watch our other programming on channel 190 on Sky TV or on Freeview via channel box on channel 271. In the meantime though, please give this video a like and hit subscribe to our channel. Have a good day.